pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the open forum, is there anyone that would like to speak to the board? Okay, seeing none, let's go to number 4, approval of today's agenda. And, and I had on there, under consent items, to pull out 5.8, the Fremont County Family Services Collaborative Agreement. And then also, I don't know if we need to add the financial report under superintendent's report, but I'll just make a note in that way we get it.
And by pulling that out from the consent items, you mean just deleting it from tonight's agenda,
Just
correct?
from tonight's, yes, thank you. Anything else? Okay.
I'll approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion?
I had one other item I wanted to pull out of consent. Do you want to do that now or when we get to consent?
No, let's go ahead and do it now.
If we could pull out 5.2, please,
Pull that out, okay,
for a later discussion.
for later, okay. Anything else? Is that part of your, that okay, Dennis, or is it amended? That's okay. All right, so 5.2 and 5.8 for later discussion. Okay, look for a second then, or that was discussion, got second, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose the same. Okay. Consent items. I'll look for a motion on those to approve them. Again, we're pulling out 5.2, the minutes of the school board workshop meetings and miscellaneous committees, and also the collaborative service agreement.
I would recommend you move 5.2 to 6.05, right before the superintendent report.
6.05. That is 5.2. Okay. Any other comments on the consent items? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve them as one motion.
Move approval.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same. Okay, consent is approved. 6, reports. Dr. Funk, 6.1.
Actually, go ahead, Jill, I think you want for 6.05 right before my report.
Yeah, let's do a 5. Yep, my bad on the math.
Yes, for the minutes of the last school board meeting, end of June, yes. I had requested training for the board on confidentiality, and I would like that reflected in the minutes, please,
Okay,
during my report.
okay.
And again, I would remind you, if you see an omission in the minutes, please notify us prior to the meeting and we can get that corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So do we need to move on adding that to the minutes?
Yes, 6:05, yes.
Okay, I would move that we add that I requested confidentiality training for the board during my report to the minutes.
Yes, please add that, yes, during Jill's report.
That's my motion.
Okay, thank you. All right. And any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose the same. Okay, that'll be added. Thank you. All right, 6.1, Dr. Funk, superintendent report.
Just graduation. We have the ALC graduation on Thursday evening, the 23rd, 6 p.m. If you could be there at 5:45, and it's going to be in the high school auditorium. And I believe Johanna's emailed the board asking for confirmation of attendance for that. And then the 2 high school graduations will take place at Hammer at 5 and 7:30. And it looks like it's going to be a warm evening. And But I'm hopeful that the weather remains good and we'll get into graduation for our students. You know, I've heard some feedback in the community. People are disappointed that there's only 2 tickets. I actually checked with legal on this to see if we could expand that. And here was the thought process. If you go to a concert, and let's just say a group is playing at an outdoor venue at the stadium, does the 250 limit include the group on the field, or is it 250 total? Because if it didn't include the group on the field, we could add more people in the stands. I got back from legal that the governor has been very clear, 250 people total to include school board members, administration, support staff, et cetera, et cetera. So, but again, I think we're one of the few high schools that's actually having a graduation ceremony in person, and we're going to try to make it as great of an event as we can do at Hammer. So, looking forward to it, and I think the families and the students are. We're also live streaming it, and so people will be able to watch it at home as well.
That graduated, and we had a graduation party in their garage, and we watched the ceremony.
So that, and then again, so weather related. All right, so if the weather is bad, we will shift it to Saturday. And if the weather looks bad on Saturday, we have the ability to move it into the high school gym if we need to. So the plan is bad weather Friday. Backup plan is outdoor then on Friday. And if the weather is bad outdoors on Friday, we will move it, make a decision Friday morning to move it into the inside. And then, again, same limits. We will just have to social distance indoors. So that's the graduation plan.
And the,
What's going to be our role? I know it'll be completely different than normal.
So basically, we'll sit up on stage, and then I think your role will be similar. You'll push diplomas forward to how we have historically, and then kids will walk by, and we'll stand back, and then they'll just pick up a diploma, and we can shake hands as they're. But they'll be in the front of the table. We'll be behind. And everyone will have masks. Yep, everybody we will have masks for everybody who shows up. We will have cleaning supplies. We will have, it'll be marked off. So how far apart people have to sit. Students will be, their chairs will be socially distanced. That's kind of the plan at this point.
I think we'd have to be wearing gloves if we touch the diplomas.
Yes, we can have gloves available, and we're going to have, programs. So there's this discussion we had today, and we've got people who are going to be handing out programs. We'll have gloves on.
Any opportunity to, as the first group is done, to shift all the leave the participants, the graduates on the field, bring the second group of graduates in, take a group picture?
We're going to see if we can do that. Yep.
So are masks going to be mandatory?
Yes. Mandatory. And we will have hundreds of disposable masks for folks if they don't have them.
And the live stream can be recorded, correct?
Yes. And we will record it as well. So, we'll have a link to it.
Jennifer, there for your financial part. Jennifer, come back on up under Mike.
I had one.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout town with the seniors on, is there a way, or would it be prudent to even have them at the field that night, or is that beyond ability?
Yeah, it's quite a production to take them up and put them down. Yeah, great idea, though.
All right, Ashley, good job, Ashley. Now I gotta get mine ready so I can see it. Okay. Okay, so our current operating referendum is $567 per ADM, and that expires after the 22-23 school year. Just for your information, the referendum cap, the amount we could go to, is $1,779. So we are well below the cap. We are well below the state average, which is over $1,000, and the Big Nine average is about $900. And I'm going to have some more Big Nine information for you. We have two opportunities for renewal based upon the expiration date, either this November or next November. And if we wouldn't do it one of those two dates, then it would expire and we would lose all of our authority. Right now, the referendum generates a little over $2 million, or about 4.2% of our total general fund revenue. Of that amount, about $1.4 million is in the form of local taxes, the levy, and we get about $728,000 in state aid. And just as a reminder, for this current fiscal year, we made reductions of about $764,000. And this, what I'm calling it, is a new trend, will continue or worsen if the basic formula percent increase is anything less than 2%, just based on our what our enrollment is doing. So this is that information, comparative information for other districts in the Big Nine. You can see that our referendum authority currently, there are 3 districts with lower operating referendums. The rest have higher amounts. I can tell you that Austin has already indicated, and their board has voted, that they are going out for a vote in November to add $505 to their operating referendum. And Owatonna is taking a somewhat unique approach. They're going out for a vote now. 2 questions. One is a renewal, and the second question is to do a staggered increase. There would be nothing new in the next for collection next year, but it would then add $300 per ADM the following year, and then the year after that it would double to $600. So obviously their amount on this chart, if that passes, would go up significantly. The next slide just shows where our property tax for the general fund portion of our property tax per ADM, how we compare to other districts. So that's the operating referendum and many other things. And you can see here that there are only 2 districts in the Big Nine that have a lesser amount per ADM on their property taxes as far as just their general fund goes. And then the next slide shows all property tax. So then you put in debt service, community education, OPEB, and when you look at the whole picture for levy per ADM, we actually, only Austin is below Albert Lea with regard to per ADM levy. That's just kind of background information. Okay, we really have 2 options. We looked at what would be if we did something more than just renewing. And the reason the renewal, and I don't think I have this slide, the renewal actually would be a slight decrease. Oh, just the renewal part I do? Okay, then I'll wait for that. Increasing the operating referendum would be one way to generate, and we picked a $500,000 amount. We know that we cut more than that for this year, but we are also very sensitive, as I know you all are, to our taxpayers. This is an amount, though, that if we decide to go for something other than a renewal, we could talk about this amount. But for now, we are looking at $500,000 in new revenue. So one way to generate that is to increase the operating referendum, and that would increase it from $573 And the 573 is a little bit more than we saw on those graphs because we had that inflationary factor that happens every year. And so it will be increasing to 573. Would increase it from 573 to 714. Operating referendums are spread out over the referendum market value of all properties. So in that case, for ag, it just the house, the acre, and a garage is considered the residential portion, and ag land other than that bit is not impacted by an operating referendum. So that's a plus for operating referendum. A minus is the referendum market value, when you just look at that, and you'll see this in a slide, a larger proportion of the amount you raise is put on the residential homeowners. The funds can be used for any purpose. It's just considered unassigned revenue, so there'd be nothing that we couldn't use those funds for. We could include the inflationary increase as we currently have, so that would automatically give us a little bit higher amount each year. And under this scenario, we could choose to have either one or two questions on the ballot. We could have one question, which would be, I believe it would be a revoke and replace. So we would revoke our current authority and replace it with a higher authority. Or we could have two questions, the first question being a simple renewal and the second question being for the higher amount. We could go either way. The next option we would have to raise the same amount of funds is called a capital project or technology levy. This type of vehicle is spread out over the net tax capacity and is stated on the ballot as a percent of that net tax capacity. So I don't know exactly what that percent is for 500,000, but the question would be, let's say 2.3% of net tax capacity. And then as our net tax capacity either goes up or down in our district, that would impact how much this amount would be generated. Over the last 2-3 years, our net tax capacity has increased 3 to 5% per year. If that continues, then we would raise a little more than $500,000. If the net tax capacity would go down, it would generate less than $500,000. If we would use these funds strictly for technology, which we would, there would be no requirement that we submit a review and comment to MDE. A plus for this one is that a smaller burden of this type of levy falls on residential properties. And again, you'll see that in the next slide. The ballot language for this can include verbiage as to the planned use, which is sometimes a plus because often, as we know, it's hard to get out information to everyone. So when they're going to the ballot box and all they see is it will increase your taxes, which is what a referendum language says, this language can say this will be used for technology replacement, software licenses, and whatever things that we want to include in that language. But in this case, it would have to be a second question. So we would have one question renewing our current operating referendum and a second question asking for approval of a capital project levy. Okay, so then this next slide shows, if you look in the second and third columns, it kind of shows where the impacts would be based on the types of property. So the referendum market value, you can see that 60% of the burden falls on residential homestead. Qualifying ag, which is anything more than the house, acre, and garage, does not impact it at all by an operating referendum. Net tax capacity, which would be the capital project levy, that residential homestead burden goes from 60% to 33%, but you can see some of the other types of property increase. And with a capital levy, that ag land would be part of that burden, would share in that burden.
Could I ask,
Yes.
where does a rental property fall on that last table?
Commercial, industrial. Okay, so this is the simple renewal. And the reason that you see decreases is really on a simple renewal based upon our current enrollment projections, which the state has, what we project for the next 2 years. Because our ADMs are projected to go down slightly, we will actually receive less on our operating referendum because of that. So that really accounts for the decrease, is because we would be getting about 62,000 less in revenue based upon our projections.
So if we went with a straight renewal, taxes would go down.
Taxes would go down, but we're going to get about, based on current projections. And just so you know, every year, if you remember on our levy, there's always adjustments. And so they will adjust in subsequent years. Right now, if we're projecting a down, that our enrollment will be down next year, but in fact it goes up, that would be an adjustment in subsequent years on the levy. So they always true it up.
So even though we are projecting our taxes to go down, the ballot language will say that this is a tax increase.
Yep, I was thinking the same thing.
Because without it, there would be no
Right.
tax.
Yes. Now, I will say, 100% of renewal questions, at least for the past 5 years, have passed. So the theory is that asking for a simple renewal is almost a given, based on what's happened with districts the last 5 or more years.
That was pre-pandemic.
That was pre-pandemic, and that whenever you have a question on a presidential election year, they tend not to do as well because so many more people are voting. Okay, then the next slide is a comparison of, the first column is the capital project levy that would raise $500,000. An operating referendum that would raise the same amount, and then what the difference is for these different property classification types, what the difference would be between those two. So you can see under residential, it would always be less of a burden to go with a capital project levy than an operating referendum.
Unless you're a farmer.
Well, I said residential, only if you're residential. Any of the other classifications, it is going to be higher to go with the capital project levy than an operating referendum.
And the third column is the difference?
Is the difference between those two. So, for instance, we say average home value in our district is $125,000. If we go with the capital project levy, that would raise their property tax by $24 for the year. If we went with the operating referendum, it would be $45, or a difference of $21. And then if you go down to commercial, you can see it flips, be more for the capital project levy than the operating referendum. Same with agriculture, both sets of agriculture. Now, a couple things to think about is that ag to school credit, which is a benefit for our ag properties on our debt service levy. So this was enacted in 2017. It affects all existing Fund 7 or our debt service levies, which would be like our Hammer project. And it is scheduled to increase to a 70% credit by 2023. It will be at 55% for this coming levy, which is a 5% increase from last year. In 2022, it would go to 60%, and then in 2023, it's going to go to 70%. So ag properties, assuming that their valuation stays the same, that's always an assumption you have to make, really on that portion of our levy, on the debt service portion of our levy, they will see another another decrease next year. The other thing to consider is in the proposed bonding bill, which one thing I read today, it sounded like they had come to an agreement, and then I read something that they haven't, so I don't know where we stand. But in the proposed bonding bill, it includes tax relief for low property wealth districts, which Albert Lee is, and if that proposed bill would pass, that would decrease our levy by about $138,000. So that would be just an overall savings to our taxpayers.
Going back to the ag
Yes.
to school credit, isn't it, I'm kind of like flashback memory.
Yeah.
Here. So like, what the farmers don't have to pay the state.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So it's almost like, it's not free money because it's still tax.
No, but it's not just our local farmers. It's part of the state aid. Yes, right. It's an advantage to your local, what they see on their property tax statement, yes.
And is that decrease of levy, is that per year, the 138,000?
So that would be, my understanding is that would be a permanent decrease, yes. That would shift to, again, a state aid and come off the local property tax.
So the state would pick up that 138,000 and take it away from the local taxpayers. It's equalization of debt.
And then my final slide is just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, because I think no matter which way we decide to go, we will talk about our need that was really illuminated during distance learning, our need to have very strong technology. We were in such a better position than many districts that we were able to provide devices for all of our students. We were able to get the hotspots out to all of our families. But obviously, that comes at a cost. And right now, we don't have any dedicated funds for that. So I think whichever route we go, we would talk about it as a way to increase our revenue to help support our technology purchases. And this just gives you an idea. The first several lines up to the firewall refresh are what Michael Davis has given me for planning purposes over the next few years of our refreshing our devices, what we need for networks, firewall refresh. So those are ongoing costs. And then if we go with the capital project levy, allowable expenditures would also be these last three lines, which would be technology supplies, software licenses, and our technology-related salaries and benefits. And you can see those three lines, I did not put any inflationary factor in those. But in almost every year, we are above $1 million in what we spend for technology. So really, either of these vehicles would allow us to raise more funds to help support our technology.
The technology, that would be every year while the referendum is in place, the 500,000?
So it's either or. So we'll no matter what we're going out for a referendum, it might be simply a renew. And then if the board sees value to this, to add revenue, we would either increase the operating referendum or do the capital projects levy. Which would also be a time limit. So it would be like we did the referendum for 10 years, which is the maximum you can do. We would ask the voters for a capital project levy for 10 years. There is an end date for that also. It would have to be reapproved at some point in time.
Does the technology one make sense because of all the issues we've had with the pandemic, and then also looking ahead, is technology going to play more and more of an important
Yeah.
role of what we're doing.
Well, even if we go the operating referendum route, I think we would talk about it in terms of, we need this to support our technology initiatives. Because I think that's something that would, and I would ask you guys, I would think there'd be something that would resonate with our voters, especially given where we are right now and the need for technology. So even if we go operating referendum, we can still talk about it as a need that we have based on our technology needs. If we go the capital levy, then it is technology only. We would have to say we can only use it for technology. But to our bottom line, it really doesn't make a difference. It really is what vehicle is in the best interest of our taxpayers, is the way I look at it, and who it affects and to what extent it affects them.
So there's a number of factors for you to consider here. First one is, okay, do we want to go out for a referendum to renew at a minimum this November? Okay, and we're going to talk about this again in August, in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
She's going to get more information on that 138,000 and how that would impact the levy and things like that.
Well, maybe by then we'll know if it's
Right.
in there or not.
So that's the first question is, okay, do we want to go out this fall in a presidential election? All right? The plus side about that is if it fails, we can go back again a year from now and we'll still have the money for this next year. If we wait and go out in November of '21, it'll be our own election. But if that one fails on the renewal, then the district will be in huge financial straits because
We'll lose $2 million.
$2 million. So that's a factor that you need to consider as a board. Jennifer just brought forward $500,000 as a number. Is 500,000 what you want to go? Is it 300,000? Is it something else? That's her professional opinion on what, looking at the forecast in the future of what we could do. Now, if you go out for a straight renewal, let me rephrase that. If you go out to just do the operating referendum and you increase it by $300,000 or $500,000, you can do that in one question. Okay, so you're just asking the taxpayers, will you increase basically the operating levy to meet, operational needs of the district? If you go out for the capital levy question, it's two questions. One will be the renewal. The second question will be a increase for the capital. And so knowing our taxpayers, and this is something I want you to just think about over the next few weeks as we start to think through this, knowing our taxpayers, are they going to be, will they support in this environment we're living in? Passage of two questions? Do we want to go one question? Do we want to wait? So those are the things that, as a board, I want you to start thinking through as we move forward here on this decision. We've been paying for technology out of hide for a long time here, and we're fortunate that we have because we are better postured than everybody. But we're going to have to do something different, and we're going to want to maintain this long term. So those are that's why I wanted Jennifer to talk tonight, to start to really get this going in your head, and we can send you that presentation as well to really start considering. And we'll, once we get the state bonding thing figured out, we'll zero in what that impact, the $138,000 is as well. And so those numbers she showed you tonight may actually be less.
So prior to the pandemic, we had talked about having a more conservative outlook when it came to technology. But with all of the distance learning then, is having a more substantial technology what is being recommended by staff?
Well, I maybe don't understand your question 100%, Jill, but I can tell you that this was our plan even before the pandemic, as far as we're currently 1-to-1. This would keep us at 1-to-1 with replacements as is recommended.
So these replacements, they're as conservative as we can go.
Yes, and keep equipment that can be in good working condition.
And as far as timing, I know for me, I always prefer to go out in a general election, whether that's good or bad for our outcome. I believe that we do get the greater number of taxpayers, we can hear their voice, and that would be my preference to move ahead this November.
We do need to make a decision at the August meeting. So we'll have the work session to circle back. And I would ask if you guys think of questions, to email Mike or me so that we can, because that's really going to be our last opportunity to really hash things out so that I could have the questions prior to the work session.
Could we receive the, you said ideal recommendation for replacements and updating and so on. Could you send us information on what that is?
Oh, so you mean, in other words, we replace Chromebooks every 4 years?
Right.
Yes, and we can get that to you.
Jill, on the vote in November, I think it enfranchises voters already getting out to vote. But the problem with it is then we have to make sure that we educate voters very well, because it's not just those who want to be, are
Right.
interested in the issue. It's everybody who might just show up and be like, oh, and might be surprised. And I know that's always hard. I think
It's
that
very-
the district always tries to do a good job, but,
That's the challenge.
yeah.
Right. Right, because the more complicated you make it, the more you need to educate people. And, I know Mike's been involved in a lot of votes. I've been involved in quite a few. And getting accurate information out to people is extremely difficult.
Especially when it says it raises your taxes.
Right.
We just wanted to go for question 1. So,
Is there a risk going with 2 questions that they would say no to the first and yes to the second? So then we'd be basically right back where we started from.
Yes.
But you can make them contingent, you can make vote the second question contingent on the first
Right,
one
but the first one
passing.
will pass.
Well, certainly history tells us
Yeah.
that a renewal would pass.
The second question is the concern.
Right.
I would be concerned that people would look at that first question and say, well, I'm going to vote down here, so
Yeah.
it's just, you don't know the logic of
Right.
individuals some days.
No, that's where the education comes in.
So I will get some sample ballot language of what a simple renewal looks like, what it looks like if we decide to go one question on an operating referendum, increasing the operating referendum. And then I do have several examples of ballot language for a capital project levy, which again can kind of enumerate the things that you would use it for.
So the main difference that I'm seeing between the full-on operating levy and the capital is that the first one has more burden on the homeowners, residential homeowners, lesser on commercial and ag, whereas the capital puts more of a burden on the commercial and ag.
I would say that's a very succinct way of saying the difference, yes.
That would be the concern with commercial. Commercial's taking a beating right now
Right.
compared with residential, and I don't know what the numbers are, but a lot of people have been able to refinance, so they've already been able to cut back on some of their expenses. So
Mhm.
would it be better to play, just leave it on the normal referendum the way it is?
That's just, who knows? And I know, and it's a kind of it's right, it's a lot of moving pieces.
if we pick the second one though, then we get some more aid from the state that's not burdening some on either with the ag.
If we go with the capital levy, we do know that ag property is going to be seeing some additional relief on that ag to school credit for the next year, yes. Now, I don't know, and I doubt, I will ask the question, but I doubt that there's, maybe we can find out, okay, just taking a random valued ag property, what it's gonna go down for their ag to school, and what this amount would look like going up. We can certainly maybe get 2 or 3 examples. So right now, we want to know the replacement cycle and examples of how ag property would be affected.
I think if you have commercial in there too, just to compare between option 1 and option 2.
Well, I think that is pretty much on what we saw. So a commercial industrial valued at $500,000. If it's the capital project levy, it would go up $225. If it's the operating referendum, it would go up $181, or a difference of $44 a year.
The fear with the commercial is what the city and county will do. If there's a
Right.
change in LGA, it's gonna throw everything
Yeah.
in the water.
And we wouldn't know that prior to when we have to make a decision of which we decide to do, if we decide to do anything.
For going through that, Jennifer.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we'll send out these slides to you so you can mull them over, okay? Thank you.
Okay, let's start with our school board members' reports, and I'll start on Kim's side this time.
I just, the only report I have is that Ed Foundation met, or had email meetings about the future of the Greater Albert Lee project, just because of the time we're in, and we heard today that, not required like people coming in to buildings will probably not, even with the best case scenario, scenario 1. So that will look different as it relates to that and that partnership, but knowing that we'll have to get creative on even additional ways of doing that. So Ashley will set up a meeting with Neil, myself, and Dr. Funk to just start talking about that so we can report back to the Ed Foundation. And then because it's going to be so hot, I promise my speech will be short.
Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Jill?
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Neil?
Yeah, the Ed Foundation also gives teacher grants every year, and in the summer, and that's done. Lila Oz and I reviewed all of the applications, and we have a limit of $5,000 that we have available to offer in grants that are not to exceed $500, which if we gave $500 to every recipient, that would be 10 recipients. But we typically whittle it down and approve, either partially approve, or a lot of the applications don't apply for the full $500. So I think we were able to give somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 teacher grants, and we always manage to find a few more dollars in the treasury. I think this year it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,400 above the $5,000. So we're pretty happy with the way that turned out.
Thank you.
I should have brought the messages that I get from the teachers who received the grants. They are like a kid in a candy shop. They're really happy.
It's great.
And question?
Yeah.
With the Education Foundation, do you guys ever talk about, I mean, we were talking about technology quite a bit again. Is there ever any look from any of the funders or that looking at focusing more on some technology across the district to help enable and help keep us ahead of the game?
That's a good idea.
Since I'm not on it anymore.
Yeah, you can give that feedback.
Yeah, you got ideas. Ken? Okay. Angie?
Nothing to report.
Dennis?
No meeting.
No committee reports for myself. Aaron, have you been doing some interesting things?
Hello, everyone. So, as we've been talking a lot tonight about surveys, I thought it'd be interesting to just let everyone know that, so this is the MDE survey they had about going back to school in the fall, and that asked parents, I think got like 134,000 responses, something like that. So I thought it'd be interesting to ask those same questions, but reworded and directed at students. So I sent out a Google survey. This was conducted July 12th through the 16th. It received 523 responses. And overall, the results are, in a lot of cases, very similar to the MDE survey. In the MDE survey, 52.6% of parents said their experience with distance learning was either bad or very bad. For my survey here that I completed, that was 69.5% bad or very bad, 26.6% said good or very good, and 4% said same experience as in-person schooling or they were unsure. In there, and then just a lot of other interesting stuff here. But like I said, it's pretty similar. Went well with distance learning. The top 3 answers for mine were the same as the MDE survey, which were access to internet, access to technology, and good communication from teachers. And then for what was challenging during distance learning, my top 4 survey answers were the same as the MDE survey, which were lessons were difficult to understand online, mental health declined, found it struggling to learn on their own, and received too much schoolwork. And then other than that, would you feel comfortable returning to the classroom in August? 75.9% or 397 students in my survey said yes, they would, compared to 7.1% who said no, which is a little bit up that said they want to go back to school than the MDE survey. And then full-time or part-time, 73 said full-time, 17.9% said they want to go back part-time, 9.1% said unsure, and then just a couple questions about why they would or would not feel uncomfortable and what would make them feel comfortable going back to in-person schooling. So that's all I have to report, except for students started receiving their AP test results back this past week, so that's been pretty exciting to hear some students tell me about those and how the AP exams were a little bit different. And I even talked with a couple of teachers who worked with students right before the AP exams, giving them a little extra help and encouragement to show them how to do well on their test. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Super.
Oh, I have a question. Well, you had great response on your survey. Was that just high school?
Yes, so that was incoming 9th through 12th graders. So I didn't send it out to any incoming 8th graders just because, quite frankly, I don't know that many. So it was just people through incoming 9th through the grade I'm in. So it was just those students.
Great information. And will you be sharing that with the administration as well, your comments that you got?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Janice. Chalkboard.
Right. Well, I'm Janice Jeffrey. I'm an English teacher at the high school and the ALEA vice president. I just want to start by saying last year I was a recipient of the Ed Foundation grant. I got $500 to put some flexible seating in my classroom, and it was loved by the students. It was great to see them just kind of walk in and pick their spot for the day and feel comfortable and ready to work in whatever spot that was. As far as teachers in the ALEA, the summer's really been spent considering what the fall might look like and preparing for that, whichever curriculum delivery method we receive from the governor. Al and I have, fielded lots of phone calls and texts and emails, and I think the number one concern, of course, is quality education in whatever delivery system we do, and safety for students and staff members. So we've been involved in weekly meetings with Education Minnesota. They sent a letter to the governor this week, and I do have copies of the letter. I know it was on Facebook. It's public information, so it's not a secret. But if you hadn't seen it and you want to see that letter, I have copies of that. And we will be working with Mike and Kathy as the governor makes that announcement, and so we can provide the best setting possible for everyone.
You survived the spring. How are you doing? Are you excited for the fall? Depending upon how we do it.
Well, right now, there's so many uncertainties, I don't know what to be excited for. So, speaking for myself, I just need to know a plan, and then I can gear up and get ready for that plan, is where I'm at, yeah.
As you talk about that, that's going to probably be one of the biggest challenges, is there's so much change, and I'm actually thinking from staffing and teachers hands-on, the mental health of the teachers is going to be so key, the ability to be able to communicate together, interact together, because every day could be different.
It could be, definitely. There's a lot of unknown variables, and it doesn't look like there will be a set plan even once we start. They can change at any time. So flexibility will be the key. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, nothing under safe and healthy schools, curriculum and instruction. We've covered those, so we'll go to number 9, effective and efficient operations, approval of the 2020-2021 activity fees. Dr. Funk, and I imagine Mr. Durbin. Come on. Paul got it, all right.
All right, thank you. So we've been working on, over the last few months, ways to reduce barriers and eliminate barriers for students in our activities. And so as we move through these slides here, we'll talk about that a little bit if needed. So here's just a snapshot. This is the current fee tables in for our activities at Albert Lea High School right now. You notice it's pretty detailed and complicated. And 2 questions, no matter what, that families are going to be asked when they register is a reduced lunch rate and a free lunch rate fee. So you can go ahead, Ashley. So we're recommending we just change our fee structure to a really simple $150 for a high school athletic fee. That's the same as what it has been. It hasn't changed. Middle school's fee from $65 to $75, just a real simple fee, but the fine arts fee of $50. Fine arts have either been $45 or $65, and there's some, discrepancy there in which ones pay which, and so just simplifying it to a flat $50 for all fine arts. They have a lot of the same opportunities for each program. So it's kind of evolved into that larger table over the years in our fee structure, and this would really simplify it. When we look at the next couple slides here, we'll look at some ways that we can provide some relief for families in a less abrasive and condescending way than asking if they're free or reduced lunch. A lot of times if families are registering for an activity right now, and with our registration platform, they want to go and select that reduced rate, the right dollar amount might not be one of the first options, and it often leads to a phone call where they have to call one of our staff and ask about fees and prices, and that's just an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of families. So this next option that we look at, the goal, I guess before we get to there, we want to simplify the fee structure, allow more flexibility for families, and you'll see that flexibility in a moment. Move closer to a zero fee system. I think that's been discussed and Dr. Funk brought forward to the board in a previous meeting. And ultimately just eliminate hurdles and questions that families might face when they're registering, the negative stigma that comes along with the registration process. So here's one option, and the colors are kind of challenging to see up here, but we just mocked up a sample registration platform of what this might look like using Family ID or registration platform. So they'll select their activity. That would be the sections part at the top. And when they do that, the fee thing, the add-ons is what would open up below that, what they select for their fee. And they can select to pay in full. We could add this flexible option in here. I can only pay the following amount. Rather than saying you're free or reduced rate, ultimately what the family's comfortable in paying at the time is what that option would be for. And then we would also have the I can't afford an activity fee at this time option at the bottom. So this would be the template we're recommending. And you can go to the next one, Ashley. So here's another option to consider as we work through this. One thing our registration platform allows is another add-on where maybe a family is financially comfortable. They can choose to help support another family or make a donation to contribute towards activity fees. So this would be another option we could put at the back end of that process too if it's something we wanted to go with. So I think there's one last slide. So just some things to mull over. Last year, approximately 31% of our participants in the fall and 28% in the winter selected some sort of relief in our registration platform. So in that table, somewhere in there, we had to navigate that for approximately 30% of our participants. Also this summer, we offered a strength and conditioning program through the school where we had a $40 fee up front or a reduced fee of $10. They just select which fee right on the front end, no table or complicated way of doing it. And 19% of those participants selected the reduced fee. So you see a lot of families are still selecting to pay the full amount, and it's full honor system in that system. I mean, there's no questions asked, no hurdles there. So.
Where you have the, I'd like to donate, maybe it would be a semantic thing. I would like to help sponsor another student. It might be more direct, they know it's going right for that. If you say donate, it might leverage, I don't know if you'd have room or not.
Yeah, so I think in the descriptor, and it's tough to see, I think we just phrased up some sample language, and what we had in there is I would like to donate to ALHS to assist another family with their activity fee payments. And so the language piece is semantics, right? But we could edit it as needed to help there.
I have a question. How, when we talked previously about trying to find ways to, get more students involved, to get more participation, we can change the rates and everything, but how are we going to communicate it back out so that we can attract those others?
That's kind of why I wanted to bring this tonight to you to approve in July so that we can get the word out that the board has approved this change in the structure so that over the next few weeks, if they allow us to have sports this fall, we can really, hit the community and get the information out there and really encourage kids to come out. So typically you approve it, I think in August is when you approve rates, and so that's why we brought it forward to tonight so that we can really get the word out and do it that way.
The challenge is going to be this year with the whole pandemic thing is there's going to be a lot of parents that will probably, or maybe say, want Johnny or Susie participating, and it might not be a good reflection of the change. I like the change, though. I think it's a start, and then just communicating it.
Did you have anything for the
So notice that was one thing that was dropped from the table. And ultimately, if a family's reached the point where they're not comfortable anymore, they'll be able to select the floating fee. They select the amount they are comfortable with. So, yeah, yep.
I have a question on the wording of the fee choices. The one with only seems a little condescending. I can only pay.
Yeah.
Either I can pay the following amount, or the first one could even say I can pay the full activity fee, $150. I can pay the following amount. I can't pay an activity fee at this time.
I actually noticed that this morning when I was reading through my slides again. That would be an easy edit there, yeah.
Are you concerned at all with that first screen coming up and the athlete or the parent seeing, or that participant, not just athlete, participant seeing that $150 and thinks that's their only option? Or there'll be some narrative for them? Or
So one luxury of Family ID is a good question, because I look at it too, and you see even the top where it says sections, and they'll all be listed in their dollar amounts of how much the fees are. One thing with our Family ID is that there's a landing page that every family is going to drop to initially when they go to register for an activity. And we could even put our fee structure right into that landing page, or some language regarding how the process will look as they dig into it more. So, and the other thing is once they select what they're registering for, It's one large page, so they'll see the fee structures below it as they scan down the page a little further. As soon as it, no, so it's one page, and so once they click on the sport, it'll open up this whole menu, and they'll be able to see what options they're looking at further down the page. So hopefully it's pretty transparent.
This looks really great. The only concern I have is that those who have less money might have less capability of using technology. So then they might be the ones that have to show up at the window at the school and ask for help, which I don't know if there's any good way around that. Also, those who haven't like registered their kids for sports or activities and we're kind of trying to get them involved, they haven't used this yet. So they'd be also ones that need maybe more help and assistance and have to have those, I guess, tougher conversations.
I agree, and so I think we've talked about a number of things to eliminate those barriers. One being the online component. Would we still have a paper pencil? One thing that we have been moving towards is being flexible. We have office staff that have a Chromebook in the office where they can help guide families through the process if needed. And also we have success coaches within the school that we can have assist in registration if they need that. And so the technology piece we're willing to assist with, and we've had our old platform we used before was much more in-depth and complicated to log into, and you'd have to have an account created where and this one you do as well, but it's once you, with this new system, once you've registered once, each family, every time they log in, it'll fill all their fields in for them unless they want to change them, and it's all at one page that opens up. And so the user-friendliness side of things is part of the reason we went to Family ID, and to help with that piece. And then the other piece is the paper pencil. It may be a challenge because we'll end up on our end having to enter it all, but if there's a kid that wants to sign up or a family that wants to sign up for an activity, our office is going to be more than willing to help them through the process. And we're already looking at translating to other languages. So that was the second piece I was going to bring up with those barriers, is that language piece. Family ID does translate to Spanish. On their landing page, they already have it all in Spanish. We're working on the other languages, and one thing we certainly can do is provide the forms translated through our success coaches if needed and get those out to the community.
How about your, the medical checks and stuff? Will that be acknowledged on here, or will that be another separate?
So this actually provides another avenue for them to turn those in. Typically, they will turn the Mayo Clinic physicals that we offer in the spring, or the State High School League has a form that needs to be completed for their physicals to take part in an activity. In the past, they've always had to be turned into the office. Now they can scan them in and load them up, and then we have them. And so it's just another way to access it and get to it. And so
you're ahead of the game then before the start of the season. You can see who's got them all in.
Right, and also when they register once, like I said, that information stays in the system, so we'll know when their next expiration date is. And Family ID actually allows us to push a reminder out to families ahead of that. So we, again, like you're saying, ahead of the game, we're taking that another step too to make sure that we're communicating to families about that reminder. We need action on. Okay.
Go ahead,
I
Ken.
just want to say thank you for all that work, and I think it met the goal that we had as a board to reduce fees, so I have to say I'm extremely happy with that, and I'll make the motion that we approve.
There's a motion. Look for a second. And it's to approve the new fee schedule. And thanks to Paul, as Ken said, working toward what we'd like to get to the no fee schedule when we can. Any discussion on that? Sorry. Any other discussion on that? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor of the new fee schedule for this next year for activity fees signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, number 10, we're heading into closed session. MS 13D.05, Subdivision 3, Board to evaluate the performance of an individual who is subject to its authority. Need a motion? And second by Neil. Any discussion? Okay. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Yep.